So, folks, the episode you're about to watch or hear is a tribute that David and I did to our late dear friend Leslie Barany. And we recorded this episode just about 2 weeks after hearing of his passing. So, as you can imagine, emotions are still pretty fresh and raw. And something I noticed is that we never really established a real timeline while talking about our friendship with Les. So I wanted to put some perspective on that real quick, mentioning that it pretty much starts around 1999, circa 1998, 99, where I first came in contact with Les Barany, and our professional and personal relationship grew up until 2021. And as we're talking, we're just sort of jumping through time a lot, and it's hard to understand the amount of time that was spent
It's gone
together.
by, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
gone by exactly.
yeah,
So yeah, I just wanted to point that out because
yeah.
that's
And I
something
just
I
want,
noticed.
yeah, and I just was going to jump in to say, if you guys are only listening to the audio version right now, please check out the actual video version of this that we have up on YouTube, because David did a bunch of editing to this video where he added tons and tons of photos
Yeah,
over
I,
the years of our relationship with Les, and it's just a really really beautiful tribute to Les, and it just it's
yeah. It's
much
a,
more.
it's a visual love letter to Les as
Yeah,
well, and you get to see a lot of images that I pulled from my personal archive. I'd say mostly 90% I was shooting, and then at least 10% were by our friend Bill Herkenrath, who shot a lot of photos
yeah.
around whenever we went to openings or restaurants or anything, and plus sometimes people would pick up the camera and just take pictures. And
Yeah,
there's a good melange of images throughout the decades, so it's a lot of fun to watch that to give a
it's a
real
beautiful, and it's a real beautiful ride and a great tribute to Les.
yeah. And so yeah, enjoy this very heartfelt, emotional episode, tribute to Leslie Barany.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Cut.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. So time has come for
Yeah.
for us to talk about Les Barany. You know,
Hmm.
I think there's there's been enough, not enough, but there's been a lapse of time now that I feel like I've been mourning.
Process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
processing and mourning the passing of our very good mutual friend Les Barany,
Hmm.
who passed away just uh, about 2 weeks ago from
Yeah.
this date when we're recording this. But you know, it's been hard to revisit every time I have this conversation. It hasn't been often because I've only talked to a few people about this, including you, less than five people, and every time I find it just very difficult because
Hmm.
he is
Yeah.
he was really a very instrumental part of my development
Yeah.
as an artist and my
Especially your life. Yeah. Like I mean, I knew Les well, but I knew Les through you, and he was a huge part of your life.
well he everyone that we were friends with, he was part of the Murder Baby group. He was part of the Gold Mine Shithouse. He was like the fifth Beatle of every group of
Yeah.
friends that I've had.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I
Totally.
mean?
Totally.
He would always fit in, even though he completely stood out. As far as
Yeah.
his political views, which was probably the hardest thing to deal with about him for me,
Yeah.
or just
As long
his
as you didn't bring it up, you were fine.
yeah. I mean, or as long as you were ready to get into it, a deal
Yeah.
like if you're gonna open up that can of worms, prepare to like fucking choke on him. But you know, he always wore his heart on his sleeve and spoke his mind. It wasn't like it wasn't reckless about it, but he was shameless about it. He didn't give a fuck, which was,
Hmm.
I think, an incredible part about him. But the point is that everybody that I knew closely knew him as well, and had
Yeah,
in one way or another a relationship with him, or an experience with him. I don't think there's anybody I know who doesn't have a story about Les, and how he managed to like get in their lives or be in their
absolutely,
lives and
absolutely.
help them.
And if you were in that world, you knew less.
Mm,
You at least knew who he was, and had some kind of an encounter with
yeah,
him.
yeah. I mean,
You know,
yeah, he,
if you lived in New York City, for sure. You know.
yeah, especially through our circle of friends, which was associated with a kind of art scene that was more of the avant-garde, underground, dark arts thing,
Hmm.
because he was most notoriously known for being the agent and best friend of H.R. Giger,
Yeah.
and and so with Giger comes a certain ilk type,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and Les was like the antithesis of this kind of ilk without being like an obvious about it.
Yeah.
You almost wouldn't guess how dark this man could get, just by looking at him. Even though by looking at him, like he had such a striking
Well, that well,
presence and look.
absolutely, absolutely. I think the first time I ever seen him
Mm,
was at Fuse Gallery, right? So
mm,
at Lit, and I went to like a group show opening. I think it was a group show opening.
right,
It was probably like some juxtaposed thing, and and uh, and he was in the room. I instantly thought he was like somebody famous, because
right.
he had just this he had that. It was probably winter time too, so he had like the scarf that just looked like an
He wore that
ascot or
scarf
something,
year round, year round. The scarf was a
and
thing, man.
the real thick eyebrows. He
Oh
had that
God.
he had that Boris Karloff like
Yeah,
look to him,
yeah,
and he looked like looks like an old golden screen movie star,
yeah. Totally, totally.
of and uh and then the second time I ran into him was well, maybe it was later, but then ended up running into him at like probably like a shithouse silkscreen party, or
Mm,
maybe when you guys were doing the show over in the Lower East Side or something
right,
like
right.
that.
Yeah,
And then I was
he
like,
was
oh
always
shit,
around.
he knows Hochbaum and these
Right,
guys,
right.
all that stuff. And that's probably when I was introduced to him.
Also, you probably during the Woodstock Festival, you
What?
know,
That's right. That would have been like the second time I probably ran
yeah,
into him.
that
Yeah.
would be on the earlier side, which is right around
Yeah.
when we met as
And
well.
that's probably actually when I was introduced to him, because I probably introduced him maybe through Foss or something. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
all through
yeah,
that, that
but yeah,
group.
that whole world there. But the
Yeah,
whole point of me bringing that up was just like, the first time I seen him, and even years later, just like looking at him, when we'd be all hanging out partying or whatever, I just look at him and go, fuck, man, he looks famous.
yeah. It
Still
was
in my head,
striking. It's very striking
Very
and distinguished and
Mm-hmm.
a creepy kind of handsome, like, but
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the golden age of Hollywood handsome, like where it'd be like this dashing man, but who he
Yeah,
also
yeah.
was the count of the haunted castle, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know
exactly. Well, yeah, he looked like he belonged in that Universal
mm,
horror movie,
sure,
like,
yeah,
whatever.
not a lot of makeup, just a little powder,
Yeah.
and don't trim the eyebrows because those were
No,
distinct,
no.
you know and yeah,
Yeah.
he definitely had um, and his voice also was very deep
Absolutely.
and powerful and strong. And when he spoke, he always spoke with conviction, even if whatever it was about, usually about art or politics. Stay away from the politics, but usually about art. And he was very knowledgeable,
What the stories, too.
And I gotta tell you, I don't like harping on regretful things in my life because it's stupid and waste of time. But I do regret that we never had him on our show. But
Yeah.
the way that our show seemed to go, sometimes we dropped out for a year or we didn't do it, and blah blah. Whatever. It is what it is, and I hate that fucking phrase so much. But
Yeah.
that's one regret, is not to get some of his stories, because once he gets going, it just goes off
Yeah,
the
just
rails.
unleash him.
Yeah, but he would always talk with great knowledge about stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to share my story
Absolutely.
of how I know less too, because I mean I I don't know if we'll get to it or not, but I would like to like ask other people their stories because they were always very peculiar and bizarre, and sometimes I share the same stories with other people and I don't remember details. I don't remember certain parts, or you know, I wasn't there for the whole thing. But there are definitely certain stories that I share with other people that I would like to get their side of things as well,
Yeah.
because they're just those quintessential New York stories, as cliche as it is. But you know, that's
No, definitely.
he was a night owl. He was awake usually from the hours of like noon until about noon.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know if he ever
Yeah,
slept actually.
I know. He's a total vampire. I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm jumping ahead here, but
Mm,
like, so like, you'd have parties at Second Avenue,
yeah,
and that, or just not even parties, just get-togethers. So whether we
yeah.
were playing poker or you were having a silk screen party or whatever.
Or we're
But it was
sitting
always that
around
thing with
drawing.
me
Yeah.
when I was like, is Les gonna show up? And
Mm,
sometimes the fucking party or the gathering would be over. It'd be 3 o'clock in the fucking morning,
mm,
and I'd still be there, and there'd be a ring at the doorbell,
yeah.
and it's fucking Les.
Yeah, because
you
chances
know,
are I'm part of his
and then
like
we'd be up until 5.
yeah, and that'd be like okay, well this is gonna go a little while longer. Because
Yeah,
he'd do his circulation, and a lot of times he'd wind up downstairs at the lit, and you could only stand lit for so long, or he would be like, talking up some girl, and then maybe it didn't work out, or maybe he
yeah, yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
show us who he's talking to, or he met
Sure.
somebody, or he's entertained. He would also entertain people coming through town, and take them around some of the spots, and that was one of them because it always
Yeah,
had the Giger in there, and he could drink for free forever. That was part of his deal with Lit is they would have house a Giger sculpture. They wouldn't keep
yeah.
it. They would just hold it there and show it, and he could
I never
drink
knew that
there.
story.
Well, it's
That
also
was
part of the
great.
deal of getting the Giger show. He had an exhibition down there too, and you know,
Yeah,
it wasn't anything official. It was unspoken. It was just known that less
yeah,
drinks for free forever. You know,
yeah, yeah.
I wonder how many other bars he had that deal with. I think maybe Duff's bar as well. He could
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
have,
That's
but
fun.
yeah, he would wind up in the wee hours when finishing up downstairs. Buzz up to smoke some joints,
Yeah,
and he would always have those serious coughing fits that you'd be like, oh my god, is he going to be
yeah,
okay? Like
yeah,
he would take these giant hits and he would always hold
yeah,
it in, no matter
yeah.
what. He would like,
You'd fall on the fucking floor and
it'd
just
be
like,
like, just let it out, let it out, let it.
I know, it's still trying to hold it back. That's right.
And then right afterwards,
That's right.
he'd crack open another one of his cigarettes, which I think was his doing in was his smoking, heavy smoking, and he knew it all the time. But he fucking
So
would
you
chomp on those. If you see any of his butts in the ashtray, they'd be like chewed on. They'd be like
yeah,
all
the ends
like
of them.
zigzag and like because he's like
Yeah,
it's like some film noir guy like hey tell you what I do with the bodies. You know? But it was so him. God.
yeah.
But yeah,
Luckily,
here's
cheers to Les then.
here's to Les. Cheers. A fantastic friend and do-gooder.
Mm-hmm.
For all the darkness that surrounded him, he was a do-gooder. He all he wanted to do was get people together and create exhibitions. He would bring artists together constantly. He introduced me to people all the time. He was always trying to finagle another show. The last time I spoke with him, we spoke about his next project, and this was just a
Yeah,
few weeks before he
yeah,
was like, you know,
yeah.
gone. And it was always
You know,
that.
yeah. You know what I was, I didn't tell you this, but it made me feel really good when you told me that he was wondering if I would be wanting to be involved with that project and stuff.
Right.
Because I was always like, I remember he did a couple things before, well into me knowing him, and I was like, why didn't he ask me to be involved? Like,
Right.
I would always be like hurt
You know,
by
I
it or
think
whatever. but it is what it is. But it's just it's
I could tell you, I could probably guess on why, but I would expose you for who you are because I think
yeah,
you project a presence that you are untouchable as far as like galleries and stuff like that. Like
really,
you're taking care of and stepping on toes of other like you're
yeah.
represented, and
Oh,
it just
interesting.
never really because you were working with other folks and it was clear
Sure,
who you
sure.
were working with, and maybe he just never
Yeah,
wanted to
thought
step on
that
those toes.
yeah, I didn't have time or wasn't
and
willing or
and
what.
plus, it just probably went over his head.
Yeah,
Nothing personal, I'm sure, but yeah, I mean, yeah, he did want you to be part of that last project, which,
yeah,
you know,
that was sweet.
but
Yeah,
that was just him. That he was always working
doing
and
something.
scheming on something,
Yeah,
whether it was a magazine or this and that, or getting an article, an interview, with his artists, because he had his like small stable of artists that he was constantly like hammering away trying to do shows with and stuff like that. And actually, this glass that I'm drinking out of, this is from the Absinthe Bar, HR Gear Bar. Les gave me
oh,
this
okay,
this
okay. I got the same
chalice.
glasses, but they're not from the Giger bar.
Yeah, well, this one says it's like got the like
Yeah, yeah,
thing
that's
on it,
great, man.
which is
Yeah, so get it. Yeah, I'd love to hear it again and get into
well,
like
yeah.
your
I know you
this.
know the story. I want to share the story, so I'm going to talk to you as if you never heard it, and I
Yeah,
want you to interject with questions constantly.
sure.
But I think for this, I already went through a fucking glass because we
Get
were
a
both a
refill.
little late getting the show started today. So
I'm
I'm
with
gonna
you.
get a quick refill. But all right, cheers once again
Cheers.
to our good friend Les Barany.
Absolutely. Cheers, Les.
Memories of Les. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm still grieving, but I'm like when I heard about his passing a couple weeks ago, it wasn't a shock because we knew it was coming,
Yeah.
and I immediately felt like luckily I had Juliet there to talk to about it immediately because I
Absolutely.
want to talk about it and I want to talk about it with somebody who knows and understands my relationship with him. So he knows that he was a mentor. He was a real figure that I looked up to, like a good friend and a mentor, right?
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
And also I didn't want to say anything. I wanted to process this until I was ready to talk about it, deal with it the way I like to deal with it. And also his wishes to respect his wishes to not like post things about it. Like I never thought that I would immediately want to be like, oh, Les passed away. I want to share the information with people because people know who I know him, and I want them to know so that they can also grieve and mourn and
Yeah.
just know what happened. But his
I know,
wishes
man. That
to
was a fearful, like, phone call to make to
mm,
you because I found out about it online and then
yeah,
I, contacted you.
right. You
Uh,
weren't the only one. There were a
concerned
few
that you
people.
might have not have known. You know what I mean? And
Right.
then I was like, oh man, this
No,
could
there
be.
were you weren't the only one. A few people wrote in and like just asked, "Is Les okay?" or blah blah blah, because word got out. I guess somebody posted something about it who didn't read entirely the email asking not to, or somebody peripherally heard about it, whatever. But I want to
Yeah.
respect his wishes to not do anything until his body was resting with his mother, and was his one of his last wishes back in Israel. So that time has come and passed, and my mourning has come and passed. My grieving is here, and it's probably going to be here forever. But my ability to be ready to talk about it and share, like I want to share it now, so that other people don't hear about it long after I'm already ready to talk about it.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Because there are people like in the shit house and other friends, whatever, who should know. Anyway, I'm going to ramble because it's difficult for me to talk about.
Absolutely.
So I start rambling a little bit because it's,
Yeah.
my way of dealing with emotions.
I'm
But I
excited because I
do,
already know where this is going.
but I do want to share I want to share as detailed as possible the story. Now, of how I know Les. But before we could talk about him, we got to talk about how I got to the place where I met him. And that was due to a friend that I met named Jacob Mikkelsen. It's a Danish friend who was living in New York at the time. He was living in a place called the Gershwin Hotel. And he
Was the Gershwin famous like the Chelsea
The
or
Gershwin, I mean, it was known for being kind of like an avant-garde art hotel. Like the whole outside of
so
the
it was?
hotel had all these sculptural elements coming out, these plasticine, like latex, not latex, but like fiberglass with steel, looked like beaks and wings coming out of the front it was, I think, a Danish artist named Stefan Linford, who was like the owner of this hotel was a rich Swedish guy who liked
Yeah.
art, or Danish guy he liked art and he wanted to represent Norwegian artists. So he would have them come out and stay in the hotel and live there and produce art and produce parties. And Jacob lived there for free, and he would throw events, you know. And the funny thing is, before I even was living in New York, I went to a show on the West Side that was run by, I forget, it was right before I moved to New York. It was an art show, and I thought it was the coolest shit because I was finishing my last year of art school in Boston. I went to a New York art show. I was like, this is the way that they're doing this. I want to get involved with this group of people. And I remember seeing this one artist's work, and then it happened to be this guy Jacob, who I met a couple of years later through another group of friends. He
That's
was hanging
wild.
out. He was hanging
I
out with
didn't know
like
this story.
DJs. Yeah, I mean, it's really crazy how I wound up getting to know him and the woman who was running that show, but I didn't even know that. Anyway, it's just a fun fact. So
Yeah.
Jacob, living at the hotel, I met him through a group of friends, and he was into like DJ after party life kind of shit in New York in the 90s, the mid and late 90s, because he was a big fan of the sort of Warhol school of art and social life.
Yeah.
And
Warehouse and all that.
yeah, he was hanging out with people like Billy Name, who was like one of Warhol's factory ex-boyfriend, and
Yeah.
just factory people. Nikki Carson, who was also had an office in the Gershwin Hotel. Nikki Carson was another Warholian factory guy. I think he did paintbrush up his ass portraits and stuff, and
It's good
other
work.
sorts of things. And he also ran a publication called Night Magazine that was based out of the hotel, their office there. And so there was all this sort of nightlife, late night social
Yeah.
scene. And Jacob was a
The
photographer. He
very
liked taking
end of
pictures.
the yeah.
Yeah,
Still
just like,
hanging on to that 70s, like, 80s,
yeah,
like,
exactly. It's like the
yeah,
last gasp of the nightlife
sure.
club kid thing, right?
Yeah.
And so that ties in because, skipping through our knowing Jacob a little bit, I'm an artist, he's an artist. He he got me involved with a possible installation at the Limelight because he
Yeah.
was,
That's
getting involved with the artist who was curating there, named Lisa
now
Almedi. What?
at this point Peter Gation's already in jail and all that
No,
stuff.
no. I think Peter Gation at this point was already out of jail or has been in
Oh.
jail. I don't know if he's been in jail back and he was extradited. He was sent back to Canada and stuff. At this
Yeah.
point, Peter Gation is in New York.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to know more about that story, just look at the Limelight history.
Yeah, Google
Yeah,
Limelight Peter
I just
Gation.
realized I brought that up, and people probably don't even know that whole story. Some people
Yeah,
might
well,
not even know the whole story.
due
Anyway,
diligence, do your homework,
yeah, yeah.
But
The,
so uh, he he was working with a curator at the Limelight, and he also was like working, dear friends with DJs who were DJing in the Limelight, and so he knew that he could get me a gig doing a
and
installation on one of the ceilings.
how long
What?
you in New York now? How long you in New York at this point?
Probably about 5 years, five,
Oh,
6 years,
so you were back in New York for a while at this point already.
a little while. Yeah, 5 years isn't
Yeah,
that long.
yeah,
But I like Jacob also. Another fun fact, which leads to this meeting of Les, is he gave me my first solo exhibition in New York at a gallery that was on the first floor of the Gershon Hotel. Now, it wasn't an established gallery, it was just a space, but the space was enormous. It was just
yeah.
this huge,
Remember the
very
slides
high
of it.
ceiling, giant pillars made in brick walls, and I was able to take, at least 6 years worth of work and install an entire exhibition and host it for a month. Anyway, so he brought me to the Limelight to check out the space to see if I wanted to do this installation. And while we looked at the place, and then while we were sitting down at one of the benches somewhere, down the stairs comes the art director of the Limelight at the time. His name is Richard Barron. Now, Richard Barron was best friends with one of the first chefs from Cafe Orleans in New York, who was my father's best friend's restaurant. So, and the chef was Maggie, and Maggie was like from the early days, from like the 80s. She was like the chef, and I knew all these people like family because they were like my dad's best friends, and he would party with them, and he would take me along all the time as a kid, and so I knew all these people. And Richard Barron comes down the stairs, and he's like one of those. He's been through all the Club Kid years of the 80s in the club scene in New York, Studio 54, the Tunnel, Limelight, Club USA. Like, he was working with Peter Gatien through all those years, right?
Yeah.
So he's a seasoned club kid, now art director of the Limelight. And he comes down the stairs, very skinny, energetic, flamboyant guy. And he's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "Hey, Richard, just, I was here with my friend Jacob, and he was showing me, I think I might do an art installation." He was like, "Oh, wow, that's crazy. Oh, really cool. You wouldn't happen to want a job, would you?" And I happened to need a job. I just quit that job where I was working for the photo archives, and I got the job just to get my teeth fixed. I got my teeth fixed, and then I quit. So I needed a job. At that point, I was like in that limbo period between jobs. And I said, "Actually, I do need a job." He's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." He's like, "Okay, well, let's talk about it." And he told me he was be assistant to eventually take over his position because he wanted to leave that job. So he needed to groom somebody to take his place. And so I talked to him about what the job entailed, pretty much just organizing, parties and making sure the decor was there, from New Year's party decor. The whole place was decked out, to like every floor each week, certain party comes up. I have to make sure
Big fucking venue, man.
It's a very big venue. It's a lot of responsibility. And so I was in charge of, like, I was his assistant learning how to hire somebody like me later, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I got that job from that visit to the Limelight, and running into Richard by chance. And in the first couple of weeks, in the first few weeks, Richard was telling me they're doing a big new installation on the top floor, and they're getting this artist in here from Switzerland, and like H.R. Geiger, this guy Geiger's doing. I'm like, oh yeah, H.R. Geiger doing a room. That's great. And I never was an enormous fan of Giger's. I knew his work. I remember when Alien came out in the movie theater. I remember the doll, the plastic stand-up one from the 70s. Like, I grew up with this shit. I know all about fucking Alien, but I wasn't like I got tattoos all over the place, whatever. It wasn't that deep, but I knew him enough to know that this guy is legit, and that he had a bar in Tokyo or something, and he was doing a room in the Limelight. And I thought it was weird because he's so goth. I always attributed him to like super goth, creepy shit. And this is the Limelight where it's like, Anyway,
super
so
sexual and
just like clubby. I didn't see how the aesthetic of this dark, sort of very, very Swiss German style, in like industrial feeling stuff, it would fit in with the club. But whatever. It's not my club. It's Gatien. He can do what he wants. So when it was just starting, right when I was began working there, so I met Les pretty quickly upstairs in the top floor where it was. Have you ever been in the Giga room in the Limelight?
No. I've been to Limelight a bunch, but that was after it was Limelight, probably.
Right. Well, it was on the top floor, so it was like, the eaves. It was very tall ceilings and stuff, but it was very like creepy, attic-y, which was very appropriate. All the way it was decorated. And so I was the point man for the decor. I didn't have to install the things myself. I was a supervisor to make sure everything was done well and right, and the people who were coming to install were,
Yeah, you were like
I
the
was
go-to
representing
man
the
if
limelight.
somebody had.
Yeah, exactly. I was
Yeah,
representing the club, and Giger's people were installing the work. So of
yeah.
course I met Les because Les was in charge of the whole thing, and he, right at the bat, like when he met me, he was like, he gave me this like, all right, kid, like this is
Yeah,
how it's gonna go, and yeah, you just make sure you get me what I need,
that
and
sounds.
everything's gonna be fine, you
Yeah.
know. And he did come across as a bit scary, but at the same time, you know, it wasn't he
But
wasn't putting
it's
on any
business.
airs about it. He wasn't putting airs. He was real. It
Yeah,
was not
it's
like
business.
yeah, and he was caring about his artist,
Yeah.
which in the long run, at the end of all this, and after knowing him and everything, he I haven't worked with an agent or a gallerist, and I don't mean this to upset or say anything bad about the people that anybody that I work with, but he took care of his artists. He protected his artists
Mm-hmm.
very very much. So anyway, that's how I first met him,
Mm-hmm.
from this job. And over the weeks, I would see him nearly every day, putting this up and make sure this is here, blah blah blah. And the conversation started getting a little bit more personal. And I let him know after some time. I remember I said, I'm an artist too. I even hear my voice like sound like, I'm also an artist. I get just like,
I like to draw.
I do things. I try. And he's like, oh yeah, why don't you maybe show me sometime? And I said, well, actually, I have a show right now at the Gershon Hotel, and this coincided right when I was doing my solo show at the Gershon Hotel. And he goes, the Gershon, yeah, it's 27th Street. My office is on the west side on 27th, and I live down on the east side, and I walk down that street every day. I'll pass by, I'll check it out. You know,
Yeah.
because at that time he had an office because he was in the advertisement game from like the olden days. Like he was in print back when they were using letterpress and like,
Yeah.
when
Yeah. That's
magazine
yeah.
articles and interviews were really important, and he had strength there because he had access to print. So
Yeah.
just before computers, internet, and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So he was able to like get the kind of unconventional art into the press and the interviews out there. He was able to produce printed matter, which was worth a lot. If you could hand
Mm-hmm.
somebody a magazine that had an article with your art and your name in it, it was worth a lot. Whereas now you can just go to Wix and
Was he just a
Squarespace.
uh, not just. Was he a freelancer, like for just a bunch of different
No,
press
no, no,
people?
no, no. He worked with specific companies
Yeah.
and printing houses, whatever. This is why I wish
I know. I know. I
I
know.
had him on our show and talk about to get the details. But you know what?
Get all that history.
This could be like a 30-part series if we had
Yeah.
him to tell his
Yeah.
story. But um, I'm going to try to stick to what I know
Yeah.
instead of
Absolutely.
hearsay and guessing. But I know that he was doing a lot of print stuff, and I'm sure
Okay.
we could talk to somebody else who has more details about that too. But I told him about my show, and a few days later, he came back into the limelight and he said, "Yeah, I went and saw your show. I passed by and I went inside." He's like, "Yeah, he's like, there's something there. There's something there, you know." He's like, I want to try something. You want to try something with me? I'm like, yeah. It's like, I have this bar my friend owns a little bit further down east, around like where the hotel was, and he has a back room he lets me do art shows in. The place was called Caliban, like from the Shakespeare, and
Mm.
and I was like, yeah. I mean, I just did my first show in New York City in an unestablished gallery. I wasn't doing things in established galleries. Period. I was doing, from anything, anywhere.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, fuck it. I was doing a ceiling piece at the Limelight, for fuck's sake. I was doing anything. So he organized the show. He had me do, after that show came down, I pulled down like a select few. He picked out a few and blah blah. It's like, all right, let's put these. I want to try it out on my friends and see their reaction. Blah blah. We had a show at a party. He was trying to get a sense not only of like what people react to my work, but how I am too, and how what I
Absolutely.
bring into the table, like what my
Yeah.
group of friends bring. Like, is there enthusiasm? Is there something there? He's like,
Yeah, that's a misconception. I think a lot of times for people is a lot of people, most of the time, just think it's about the work, and it's the
mm,
whole package. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is. It's about the potential, where it's going, where it's coming from, the energy that's there, the honesty of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I see that in hindsight now, of course. And, I would probably use the same tools to try to bring up a young artist's career, I think the same way.
Yeah.
So we did that show. It was a blast. I had a great time. It wasn't like a money making thing, but he got a sense of what it's like to work with me a little bit. He got a sense a little bit of his peers' reactions, the people he knows, how they feel about the work, if they believe in it, because it's all about believing in the work, whether or not it sells, whether or not the real thing is if there's people stand behind the work, believe in it,
Yeah.
see see more than just the surface of something. If they get an emotional response or whatever it is,
Yes. Yeah. How it interacts with people.
yeah. And I think from that we began our personal relationship, friendship, our personal friendship, because we did continue to work for many years professionally since then. But we also he took me under his wing to do the kind of shows that if you don't have a friendship with this person, you're not going to be able to do these kind of shows because it involves traveling, it involves spending a lot of time together, working collaboratively, pitching in, doing your part, you know,
Yeah.
doing some of the heavy lifting work. It wasn't like I'll be your agent and now it's free sailing. It's like I'll represent you and I'll be the voice that gets you in the door. You get in the door and you make as much noise as you can,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that was the best way to do things because
This is like a speculation on my part, but it seemed like Les was also that kind of person that he wanted to get you from the ground up. You know what I mean? You know,
yeah,
he
he
wanted to
wanted to
get you like in the very beginning of kind of like your career and feel like he was a part of kind of helping you rise up. In
yeah,
that
I
kind
mean,
of world. Then kind of grabbing people already that they're already kind of established or something like that.
right, because he had his stable of artists, which included some artists that were very well established, and it was just a matter of
Yeah,
logistics, setting
but
up
weren't those
exhibitions.
people, maybe other than Giger, but weren't those people like people that he kind of built with them?
Well, not necessarily. There definitely
Yeah,
some that were like already. You got artists like Victor Cohen, who was a good friend of his
yeah.
and worked with him for many years, who was already had a very well established graphics
Okay, I didn't know that.
illustration career. He didn't need art to support himself. He was making his money to be able to do anything he wanted all the
Yeah,
time, and so he was able to spend time making art as well as any way he wanted, and wasn't dependent on it to be able to eat
yeah, yeah,
and pay
yeah,
the bills. But he was able to do those things, but he wasn't dependent. Anyway, it
yeah,
was a melange, a whole group of different photographers, painters, artists of all types, but that he believed in. And
yeah.
it's like he said something once, like in an interview about the like my work was like how I see his philosophy is like he doesn't know if it's going to do great, but he knows that there's something really great about what I was doing. That there was it
Hmm.
was obvious that what I was doing was good, but didn't know if it was going to be something that caught on or sold.
I could present the work. I mean, I know how to get the work out there so it's seen by people, and then the work has to sell itself. There's no guarantee about that, but it's a pretty reasonable guess that I'm not alone in recognizing that his work is good.
Became
But it
famous and
resonated.
all this.
Yeah,
Yeah, he believed it, you know.
I believe. Yeah.
And yeah, and from there it was just a stepping stone to like he also would, you know, not use, but I will say use his artists to do things like he used opportunities to introduce artists to other artists. Like when he sent me, say sent me, he got me an exhibition in Switzerland. This was like before I've shown, you know, outside of New York and Boston. You know, Boston at school and New York just because I lived there. And if you're not showing in New York and you live in New York and you're an artist, it's because you're lazy, because you could show it in New York. You just have to, you know, go to the
On the
cafes and
pavement.
blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
talking about like, you know, early years. I'm still in my like late 20s at this time. And so he got me a show in Switzerland, a group show. So of course I'm going. I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm going. And so he used me to pick up a package from Giger, which was a sculpture. He wanted me to bring back a sculpture for an exhibition, and this was going to save a lot of money on shipping because I was going to put it in my suitcase.
Yeah.
So but he used that like.
Meanwhile, you get like a fucking $80,000 sculpture in your suitcase.
That's about how much it was. It was about $80,000.
Well,
It's funny.
So. It's Giger.
Yeah,
So.
and but through that, you know, in order to do that mission, you know, I got to stop in Holland, meet another one of his artists. He's like, you're stopping in Holland for layover. Go meet Andre Lawson, who was another one of his Barany artists, banner of stable of artists,
Yeah.
who was a metalsmith and sculptor as well. So I got to meet him. He always tried to introduce his artists together. And from there, I went to Switzerland, where I did the show. And then after the show, I went to Zurich, and I went to Giger's house and spent the afternoon with him, which was fantastic, you know, because he showed me, you know, around his yard. He took me for a ride on his crazy weird train set.
Train.
He like
I
showed me
can't
his.
believe you got to ride that.
Not only
You
that,
went Giger fucking driving it.
Giger was driving,
Like
and
a
he was driving
madman.
so fast, like, because I mean, he's already had this train in his house / yard because it runs through the house too,
Yeah.
like just around, and it was going so fast around the turns, and we jumped the rails, and we jumped off the track,
Right.
and he's like, ah, shit, yeah, and I had to pick it up, like he's like, yeah, here, because his English not so good,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so I had to pick the train off the ground, put it back on the track, and then we take it for another ride. And he's like so fast. I'm like, this little thing shouldn't be going this fast. But, I mean, it was a pretty phenomenal afternoon because he also, like, at some point he had a meeting with some snowboard company that wanted to do Giger design. So he's like, yeah, you stay, you know, look around, you know. I had to kill a couple of hours. So
Yeah.
he just left me on my own around his studio. And so I was rummaging, you know, just like flipping through piles of drawings, and I'm looking, and there's original drawings from Dune. Like, and I start to realize what I'm flipping through, and I'm like, ooh, like, okay, carefully, you know, but it was very, you know, just there in the
Yeah,
studio.
and they were just like, just sketchbooks laying out.
Yeah,
you know,
and piles of paper and posters and flipping through books of, you know, like sealed in plastic images and beautiful paintings that are behind stacks of
now,
things.
Was his studio in his museum? Like was that all the same building?
No, his studio is in his house in Zurich. His museum is in Gruyere.
Oh, I thought it was all the same.
A little bit west. No, he had bought a house in Zurich, and then it was like these row houses. Then he bought the adjoining houses and broke through and connected. So he had, like, you know, all the space, and it was filled with all these little weird nooks and crannies. I found one little, like, climbing up nook which had like a wall full of books, and his cat was sleeping there, and I hung out there, and I took like a short nap in this little bed area with his cat, and it was just one of these magical, lovely afternoons. And then him and his wife Carmen Brought down the sculpture I was supposed to transport. We wrapped it up, and there was another like long thing and a bag thing, and he took a picture. I actually have a picture that he took of me, holding the packages and getting ready off to America,
Yeah.
with the stuff.
Did you get the chair photo with him too? Right, you did, right?
I
That
did not
everybody
do a
seems
chair
to
photo.
have that
No,
met
no,
him.
no. I never did the chair photo. I took a photo with him outside the gates of his garden.
Okay,
I have
because
a
I
photo
remember seeing
together.
I remember seeing one. So
Yeah,
like I remember I must have been that one.
we took a photo together outdoors. I didn't do the chair one. I sat in the chair. I know that chair. I
Yeah.
sat at that table while we ate olives from a can together, like, and drank some wine. It was like opening cans of olives and and drinking wine and feeding his cat. And
That's
we didn't have like a big dinner or anything, but um, yeah, okay. So that was pretty much my whole visit, like boom, boom,
yeah.
in and
Yeah.
out. One day there. And a funny side note
Unless
on
yeah,
the
you being the mule.
and I muled back the sculpture. Excuse me. And I flew back into JFK with it, and of course I had to go through the customs X-ray machine. This is pre 9/11, so things were a little bit laxer with
Yeah.
security, whatever. Anyway, so they ran it through, and they had to run it through again, and they called a guy over. So like, look at this thing, and it was a base. Sculpture was pretty much a base with a long stem and a bust on top. And I'll edit in some pictures during this thing because
Yeah.
I have a
Sure.
whole slew of photographs I'll share.
Yeah.
But it was wrapped up in cardboard and tape and whatever. And they're looking at it, and they're hovering over it. And I'm standing right there while they're looking at it. I see what they're looking at, and they're like, God, it looks like an alien. And I said, actually, you know, it's funny you say that because it's a
Because
sculpture by the guy who did Alien, blah, 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 blah. And, it was a fun fact thing. Like, cool. And they run it through. They just want to make sure the base wasn't carrying like heroin or something, I guess.
yeah, yeah, a brick of cocaine.
So I did mule that sculpture in and delivered it to Les, and he was very pleased. And so I think I didn't think it was a test, but I did definitely pass another test by having a
Sure.
successful mission. I came back. I spent time with Andre Lawson. I told him all about it, and we went out for beer. And Andre actually, I have right here these rings that Andre Lawson gave me. He he was a metalsmith. You can't see these too well, but
Wow. Yeah.
he had these rings in a box of stuff that he was going to melt down and reuse the silver.
Yeah.
And he did a funny, joking little series of food. So this one is like a fish dinner,
Fish.
and this was my English breakfast: eggs on toast with coffee and
Oh, okay.
cheese.
That's what.
And this
That's
ring, it's really worn out because I wore this ring for years, every day, because it's so
great.
weird and big, and people will be like, man, what is that weird metal, like, is it like
Yeah.
spikes and studs? I'm like, no, it's English breakfast. It's eggs on toast. I love breakfast. So I got a lot out of that trip. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you some of the stories that happened while I was there, the escapades in the mountains of Flimsdorf, where the exhibition was. And Flimsdorf was like a ski resort, but was doing the exhibition in the summer. So instead of snow-capped mountains, I was surrounded by flower-covered hills and waterfalls. It was a magical place. Magical things happened,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and that's because of fucking Les. The
Yeah.
whole thing was because of
Yeah.
fucking Les. He
I want to keep working with this guy.
and he believed not only that I could do the job to pick up the stuff, but he gave me that chance to have that experience.
Yeah.
And that experience opened my eyes to so much because at that point my travels were really limited. I wasn't going a lot of places outside of the States. And as a young adult, I did as a child, but as a child, your travel experience is very different, obviously, and it was a very important time for me to be going through this too, because being in my late 20s as an artist, in New York City, trying to still like re-find myself, because you find yourself in school. I found my voice in school, but New York shakes you up. You move to New York City, wherever you're from, whoever you are, it's gonna fuck you up. You could spend at least 12
Jump in with the
months.
sharks, baby.
Yeah, like
Jump in.
restart, you know.
Yeah.
And this really filled me not only with the confidence, you know, to like take the world, you know, rather than just this city that I was familiar with and comfortable with. I wanted to get more familiar and comfortable with the world, you know, of places. Like, just opened my head. It really, really opened my mind to this whole experience. And he was all about that. He was all about doing those things. And that show, of course, led to other exhibitions, led to, you know, not only I got to meet Giger, Giger got to meet me, and Les told me, he said, I talked to Giger, you know, after I got back. He's like, yeah, so I was talking to Giger about your visit. Like, so what'd you think about David? And from Les goes, so and Giger was like, yeah, he's nice, but is he transvestite?
That's right. I remember you told me this before.
And I was shocked. I'm like, wait a minute.
And this is when you had the bleached blonde,
well, yeah,
spiky.
I had some, like, you know, short hair with some bleachy spots and stuff.
Nothing that
And
would make you. But,
yeah,
you know.
no, but that wasn't it. He goes, no, why would you think that? And he goes, yeah, because he would look very good with makeup.
I've
Like,
always thought that myself.
which is like the strangest kind of like question to ask if somebody is a transvestite, because
Yeah.
they would look really good with makeup
Yeah.
on. So
Yeah.
apparently Giger thought it was very pretty. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, dude, you posted that license or that ID of you just recently from when you were like 18, and I was like, that's a pretty boy right there, man.
It's funny.
The big lips, those blue,
Well,
those eyes.
I came across that idea this last week when I was rummaging. I was staying at my
Man.
parents' house last week, and I was rummaging through stuff, and I found my mom saved a whole Ziploc bag that said David on it, and it was filled with 8 IDs, because every
Yeah.
year you get 2, so it has the whole like transition of my first year all the way to my last year.
Eh?
Yeah. Well, haha, funny. Whatever. I looked at it with makeup, but I saw the first one, and what I realized with that picture was I look just like my niece Carly looks now, because my niece Carly is going to college for her first year in 2 months, and her
Okay.
hair is very straight and like short up to
Is that the
there.
one you just shot, or
Yeah,
or is that? Yeah.
that last picture. Yeah, she's the girl who I've been shooting for 12 years
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But her hairdo is right now exactly how mine was my first year in college. And we've always been compared to, like, she's always had some look like me, the big lips and the eyes, and always saying, you look like Uncle David, you look like Uncle David all through the years. And I just thought it was funny, so I posted that up. And I didn't expect like people to be like, wow, what a hot whatever. Like, I thought I looked like an awkward 90s, like, what a butthead, because I
You
was into the
definitely look
Buttle
like you go to a
Surfers and
Nirvana show, but yeah, but I mean,
yeah.
you know.
Anyway, yeah.
But you are a lovely
Oh,
looking man.
thank you. You're also very, very simpatico. Um, so that was my first experience with Giger, you know, that Les brought into my world, which he
Yeah.
brought Giger actually when Giger did a show in New York, he brought Giger to my studio as well. Like he
No
didn't.
fucking way.
Yeah, I had a studio on Ludlow
Are you
Street.
living in? Oh, this is Ludlow days.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
I had like a tenement flat apartment with my ex-girlfriend. It was her place, and she took over her sister's leather shop, New York Custom Leather.
Yeah.
Agatha, who was a leather seamstress, and her sister Sue took over her shop, and it was like her shop and my studio. And he brought Giger to that place, and I actually I under Les's suggestion, he didn't force me to do it, but he asked me if I wanted to donate a piece to Giger,
Yeah.
to his
I
collection.
would have done it.
Because I think any young artist, I was not even, well, maybe I was 31 at the time, whatever. You know,
Yeah.
if you wanted to take it, and Giger was in the studio looking around, and and I don't remember exactly how I asked. It's like, okay, which one? I like asked which ones he liked the most. Like, yeah, this one and this one. It's like, okay, which one? If I could give you, if you would be willing to take one, which one of these would you have? Like, and so I had him choose a piece, and he
Right.
chose one called Incubus, and Incubus was actually one of my favorite pieces at the time because it represented sort of a very landmark style I was doing at the time. It had all the elements of collage and photography and frame
It's at the
building
high
that was
point.
like, yeah, it was like the quintessential me at that point, and I felt very
Yeah.
strong about that work. And I knew that if I was going to be giving this piece to someone like Giger, that it would be seen, and I felt good about it. I didn't want to give him like a piece that I would be happy to get rid of. I wanted to
Yeah,
give
you
him a
want to give
piece.
it like cream of the crop type of,
Yeah, exactly.
something that, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I asked him which one he thought was the best, and I said you can have that one. And she's like, yeah, very grateful. I didn't speak very good English. Um, and needless to say, a few years later, I was in Gruyere, Switzerland, and I was going through the Giger Museum. It was like a party, something going on there, and I made it to the top floor, which housed his collection, his private collection. We
Yeah.
got his personal collection, even artists like
Joe
Andre
Coleman.
Lawson. He had Joe Coleman, and right next to Joe Coleman, I see my piece hanging.
Dude, what the?
I turned a
Just,
corner. I didn't even know it was there. I thought it was in his house, or buried
yeah.
behind like a pile of stuff or whatever. Like I
Yeah,
didn't
or,
think he
or
would
it's still in something that you probably,
in a box.
like I would think never got even hung up, never even was taken out of the box after it
Yeah,
was shipped
exactly.
there or something,
I turned the corner and I like I took a second glance, a double take. I was floored and
Yeah, like,
humbled and
oh,
just felt
fucking
like
way.
that was amazing feeling, and that whole feeling like just once again like boosted my confidence, boosted my like self-worth, which I think is one of the
Yeah,
strongest assets for an artist like me. I think most artists really value that, but personally, I really need that feeling to keep going. I need that reassurance. It
yeah.
helps a great deal. It
Special,
really
man.
does.
It's crazy special.
Yeah. Because I grew up, not always with the most supportive, surroundings and
Yeah.
encouragement. So stuff like
And
that
now to see this
really helps.
icon of a painter and I mean huge influence on the world of of art, having your painting
Yeah,
hanging in the
yeah,
gallery, your
saying
private.
yeah, in his museum, in his personal collection, in his museum, felt fantastic. It was
Yeah,
amazing. And once again, that was because fucking Les. And I'm sure
yeah,
Les encouraged him to hang the painting because it's not like Giger has got all the time or energy in the world to curate every room in his fucking museum. No.
sure.
But Les was behind the energy that pushed it to make sure that his artists were taken care of, represented, and respected. Because if you leave it just to the underlings and interns, things are going to fall apart like that. And he knew it.
Yeah,
But that's why he was always engaged. He was always there to make sure things were done right. And he did rub a lot of people the wrong way, but that was only because he wanted to be sure that the people he represented and was representing him were shown properly,
hmm
and shown in every opportunity. He would recognize the opportunities that would elevate,
hmm
a smaller one here, another one here, like he understood the communication of collaboration. And that's why he was at almost every like Gold Mine Shithouse early year, before it was called Gold Mine Shithouse, where we used to get together every Saturday night.
yeah. No name or whatever. You guys
Yeah,
just hanging out, just making shit.
exactly. He would be there and he would stay up all night while we painted. He'd have his newspaper and smoke cigarettes and read the Post and the Daily News, and he'd talk and walk around and check stuff out. Always fascinated by the whole energy of it. Like he fed off of the
Yeah,
energy of the
yeah.
other artists.
Yeah, that's why you could tell even like when he would come by to the parties or just the hangouts that we would have, he loved it. You could tell he loved it. Like he
And it
just
was great when he did.
and he also loved showing other people, like turning other people onto it and just kind of like, look what my friends are doing,
Right,
like showing it off and stuff.
exactly. He knew how to
He knew it was very important. He knew it was important, and he knew that also too. Like when you guys were doing that, it was keeping that New York City vibe, like old thing alive still.
We were carrying a torch that was part
Yeah,
of
that's
something
exactly.
that was not it would die if it's not being done. Like it's something that could
Yeah,
easily get buried in the mainstream popular culture, and this sort of like desire to be
yeah.
famous rather
It
than
was
to be
also
organic.
it was also too like not to stray too far, but like what you guys were doing also wasn't like really contrived. It was very real. You know what I mean? It was like this really kind of real thing that was happening in the moment, and it wasn't like let's do something to be cool, type of
No,
thing. You know what I mean?
I mean it literally
Yeah,
was a way for like all we wanted to do was make art and not go and just not be in a bar, not to get away from the noise, which is New York, because
yeah,
between working your job and your social life, it's just constant noise and intoxication. And without productivity. Like we wanted to continue to get intoxicated, but we wanted to be productive and we wanted to be in a controlled environment, which was a
yeah,
studio that had the resources and we could be as loud and messy as we wanted. And anybody could come be a part of it. But Les fed off of those energies. He used to come to the Murder Baby practices every Sunday and he would have brunch with us and he would sit upstairs and smoke cigarettes and drink coffee while we went downstairs and play Murder Baby. And he would be at all the Murder Baby concerts. He'd be filming us, taking pictures. He has the first Murder Baby Live at Lit video, which I have the whole video of that he shot, which
oh
was
no way, really?
amazing concert. You know, of course, like amazing in memory. I'm sure if you listen to the recording, it sounds awful and it was like whatever noise, but we were a noise band. That was what we were. But he was always present at all these things, and everybody knew him. You can't forget the face. I mean, once you see his face,
Yeah.
it's less. And
Yeah,
every
I know.
time,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just this something that you cannot forget.
and every time
Right?
he'd show up, you'd feel that. You'd feel like
Yeah.
Les is here. All
Well, yeah,
right. It was like,
exactly. You would feel the energy in the room just change, and this presence of like, ooh, things are about to get excited.
yeah, because he was always excited and he was always
Yeah,
open for like some action. He was always up for something exciting, new, organic, and real, and not just like for the sake of making a mess, but for like something is
yeah,
going to happen and he's going to be a witness. Like if he's there, it's because he could tell something is going to happen. He wants to
yeah.
bear witness to what is about to
Yeah,
happen.
another thing that I love so much about him, now that I think about it, is that he was just as much of a great listener as he was a storyteller and
Yeah.
like a talker. You know what I mean? Like he
Yes.
loved to listen to
Hmm.
the conversations that were happening, and sometimes you could tell he was just kind of being a fly on the wall, just
Right.
soaking it in,
He
and that.
he genuinely enjoyed and absorbed it, and
Yeah,
because he was thinking all the time of like what, not just what he could do, but what he could do for that person, with that person, or explain or expose that person to, like how he could connect that person to something that they want or need, in a
yeah,
lot of ways, or might be interested in. You know,
yeah,
he'd find the connections, he'd bring them together. He wouldn't just recognize them; he would go out of his way to bring them together, like
yeah,
with folks, and every once in a while, just bring you together with somebody that has nothing to do with you, but just to see how these two worlds meet.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like I
yeah,
get to hang out with Annie Sprinkle, who was like an artist and like who did like a lot of crazy weird porn performance art.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
always a lot of sexuality in what
yeah.
he was involved in too. Not just explicit sex, also erotic stuff
Hmm.
he was very into. And yeah, he was into sensual eroticism, dark eroticism, soft core,
Yeah.
hardcore, beautiful softcore photographers. You know, a lot of like people who were on the edge. You know, real outsiders and outlaws. You know, these
Hmm.
were his people. You know? And I always felt a little bit like I don't know, maybe imposter syndrome with that because like, what am I doing hanging out with these folks? I'm just like some, you know, suburban Jew. Yeah, hey, how are you? You know, hanging out with these like, am I this dangerous of an artist or this
Yeah. Yeah.
exciting? But you know, I guess he saw something in me enough that I
Well, I think it
somehow
worked.
I fit in.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it
but I
worked.
was young too. I was much younger. You know,
Yeah.
I think a lot of my work strayed away from that style. Originally, what I was doing in the late 90s and early 2000s. I don't know if I was doing the work that I'm doing now, we would meet in the same way. I mean, it's impossible to tell,
Yeah. But I
but
can see in your very early on work, definitely him being very, very intrigued by and drawn to, I'm
yeah,
sure, what he's seen at the hotel. You know what I mean? Like,
I think so because I was very much into artists like Joel Peter Witkin, who was like
Yeah, yeah,
dark
yeah,
photography and collage and a lot of
yeah,
sexual and religious iconography mixed
yeah,
together to create these like
yeah.
taboo sort of
But
things,
even
images.
in the early 2000s, still there's a lot of nudity and
Yeah,
or mid 2000s when I met you,
yeah.
a lot of nudity and stuff.
I stopped doing nudity. I think in like around 2010,
Yeah, I don't think that your
2011.
work is sexualized though by any means.
No, I think my work has definitely there's like sexuality into it, but I think I
Yeah, but I
two
think it's more
things.
empowerment than it is more about the. I'm sorry, dude, to cut you off, but
No, no, it's okay. No, I like to hear what you think because it's your
yeah.
point of view, and
Well, I think it's more of of an empowerment of strong women and more empowerment of maybe the body versus sexualizing the. I mean, it's the same way that I feel about my work. I don't really look at my work as being sexualized, even though I paint a lot of nudes,
right.
and that. Um,
I think there's
uh,
a lot of we both have similar sensibilities and romance with you know uh, early sculpture and
yes,
paintings and
yes,
the eroticism of the female figure. There's no doubt
yeah,
about it. We
yeah,
both are really into that. We both are
yeah,
really into it.
yeah. You think about
There's
all the
nothing.
marble sculptures and stuff like
Yeah,
that
there's
of
nothing
that time.
exploitive if that's like a thing to worry about. But it's definitely about it's like sensuality and sexuality and the beauty and form of the female figure. But I think what happened around 2010, 11, two things. One, I in 2006 and seven, I started this project where I was working with my niece, my young niece, over the years, and that project kind of took over a lot of my
Yeah,
work. And obviously, the blatant sexuality had nothing to do with it. And also, I got more interested with my other models, my other like, people who I was photographing. I was getting more interested in provocative sexuality and sensuality, where there was more of a suggestive tone rather than
mhm,
it being outwardly. And I still did a few full nudes in the like later 2000s, 2012, 2013, but it's kind of trailed off. My
yeah,
my instinct to photograph nudes kind of trailed off, and my interest went more. I got more like in what's the word? You know, inward in
yeah, and
thinking
yes,
about
yeah,
memories and thoughts and stuff like dreams and things became less even figurative. Where I was doing stuff that was about towers and
mhm.
buildings
More
and
like
plants
more
and
sculptural.
forests. Yeah,
Yeah.
and mixing the two in between alongside with this project doing with my niece, which was become this 12-year story that I've been sort of narrative I've been running through. Anyway, I'm trailing off on that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I'm sorry. That was
that
my fault.
No. It was because I started thinking and wondering about like how Les would react if he met me while I was doing the work that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
If he would recognize that same sort of darkness, because I still have darkness in my work. There's no doubt about it. It's not harping on
Absolutely.
darkness. There's a certain darkness that I embrace, which is the kind of darkness that hides behind
Yeah, I
corners
think
and
it's just
dreams.
you just it's there's these two dark paths. You just went on this one. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Instead of this,
exactly,
you took a little
exactly.
detour, and now you're going down that dark path. But yeah,
I'm not afraid to encounter and embrace darkness, but I don't, it's not the forefront. It's not
yeah.
the, like the
I
center
think the big
stage.
difference is between what you do now is that you have. I mean, not the big difference, but a difference is
Correct.
that you have a heavy weight that is camouflaged behind these kind of brighter palette. You know what I mean?
It's integrated. It's definitely
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you can't, there's no light without darkness. There is no beauty without death, and you can't get around it. There Nothing exists without no longer existing.
yeah.
And it's the inevitability of anything that you love. Any That's why love is the center of my work, is what I feel. Love is what drives me. Love is what inspires me the most, and love is what I react to strongest in my work. But you cannot ignore the fact that there's nothing that you love, whether it's a puppy, a flower, or a wife, or a mother, that will not pass. It all
Hmm.
goes. It all has the caveat of death. There's always attached at the end of this demise, this disintegration. And so there's a darkness that is a passenger of everything that is beautiful. And so I do like to focus on joy and love, especially when I'm feeling down. But you can't escape the fact that the clouds obscure the sun every once in a while, and that's
Yeah,
part of it. And that's just part of
yeah.
it. That's part of being alive. You can't be in denial of that completely, because but at the same time, on the same note, you can't harp on the death and the darkness so much, because you're evoking, you're encouraging, you're summoning it in a way, because it's a ritualistic act of creating this thing. And you might not be creating something, might not manifest, like the devil's not going to appear in front of you, but it's going to appear inside here. It's going to be inside your mind. It's going to visit you in your
Gonna
dreams. It's
fun
going to visit
haunt
you in
you.
your waking life. Yeah, exactly. You will haunt yourself
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
surround yourself with the darkness
I don't know
constantly.
about that.
Yeah. Ah, anyway, I'm gonna I want to I'm gonna get back to Les a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You know, so obviously there was all these things that that he brought into my life, and there was a point where we were just doing show after show after show. He introduced me to Pet Silva, who had Art at Large, that gallery that was like up,
Hmm.
multiple stories, and he got me a solo show over there. I think that was my third solo show in New York, right after the Metalstone Gallery show that I had in 2000 and whatever, 5 or 6 or something.
Now,
And
the Metal Stone was solo, or was the Metal Stone with
I
Shithouse?
did I did a solo show. Actually, no, this okay. Metalstone was after, because
Okay.
Shithouse was first. I don't fucking remember.
I know. I'm
Anyway,
so, dude. I keep on taking you away from shit.
no, it's okay, because they
But
all are
I'm just
tied in
curious.
together. They're all tied
Yeah,
together, because the
yeah.
show that I did with Pet Silva at Art at Large, that was at the I did that show, and then I was going to do another show with them, a two-man show the following year, right? Because it was a good show. We made some sales, blah blah blah. And the next year, I was booked to do a two-man show. Now that two-man show fell through, because I was also asked to do another show at the McKeg Wells Gallery in Brooklyn,
Hmm.
and I
That's
was
what we
going to
would
do
do.
that show a couple months later, and it was going to be in Brooklyn while the Art at Large was in New York. Now, the Art at Large in New York that I had booked with another artist, that other artist took offense to the fact that I was doing another show in Brooklyn, thinking that I was going to take the energy from that show and put it into Brooklyn rather than put it in New York, where he deserved that energy. Right? It's like,
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Manhattan. Manhattan.
First of all, fuck you. Yeah, I was in Manhattan. Yeah, in Manhattan.
Yeah.
It's New York City, and then there's Brooklyn. These are two different boroughs, two
Yeah.
different shows, two different galleries, and I was getting shit from the other artist who essentially was just trying to get me out of that show so he could have it to himself. And he managed to do it because he had more, power with the gallery at the time.
Well, it also sounded like he gave you the ultimatum, and you didn't like that, so you were like, "Go fuck yourself," pretty much.
He gave the gallery the ultimatum. The gallery told me about it, and I said, I don't want to show with this guy.
Yeah,
I
fuck
don't
this.
care. You
Yeah.
know what? I'm out of the show. Fuck him. Because my solution was, instead of doing my solo show in Brooklyn and a two-man show with him, I was going to do a two-man show in Brooklyn and a two-man show with him. This way, I'm splitting it up. This was my way of showing you that, like, I'm not going to put all my energy into my solo show. I'm gonna water my show down, not water it down. I'm gonna like do a two-man show instead. And this way,
Yeah.
you're going to still get me full force. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, his reaction was going behind my back to the gallery, saying, he giving them the ultimatum that if I do the show in Brooklyn, he's out. So I said, okay, I'm doing the show in Brooklyn. Fuck you. I'm not doing the show with him because he's a piece of shit. I don't want to share walls with this motherfucker.
Yeah.
He's a malicious, conniving, underhanded cocksucker. And fuck him. Fuck him. Flat out. He wasn't some big shot or anything. He was like,
well, he thought he was.
He thought he was. He probably still thinks he is, a stupid little putz. I heard he has a tiny dick from good sources. Anyway, that's probably what makes him such an asshole. But anyway, so he gave the gallery ultimatum, which I accepted and said, "Fuck you. You take your show. Go fuck yourself forever." And
now was Les bummed out about that because he initially
he was bummed out. He made sure that I was given a solo show the next year.
No. That's amazing. I meant, like, was he upset with you that you were
upset with me? No, he understood. He understood completely.
Yeah.
And he didn't like that guy either. You know? Because one time, the same artist asked Les to represent him. And he said, why? He's like, why would I do that? He's like, you can get 50% of my sales. Or 30%, it's 20%, whatever, an agent percentage, 20%. And Les goes, oh yeah, what's 20% of zero? He's like, because you're not selling shit. What the fuck? It's nothing. I've never done anything with you. You made a few sales, so you think you're like fucking Johnny sells a lot, So Les was like, well, great. What's 20% of zero? Because that's what you're offering me right now. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So anyway, because I was forced originally to take my solo show, make a two-man show before he gave the ultimatum, because before he gave the gallery the ultimatum, I decided, fine, he's upset about it. I'm going to find another artist to do the two-man show with. And that other artist was you. Yeah. And that's how I met you.
Yeah.
So essentially,
I know, absolutely.
It's because Les got me this show with Art at Large, which led to this two-man show, which led me the need to find another artist to make a decision on the fly, which, it was almost like picking a name out of your hat. Your name came up first because my ex-girlfriend mentioned you right away because we just saw your work the previous day at the CBGB's gallery, and it all clicked.
Yeah.
I remember like seeing your show at the Woodstock, and then we saw it at the gallery. I'm like, yeah, of course, it makes perfect sense. His work and my work are totally different, yet totally the same. Let's do it. Yeah. And that's how you and I met.
Connected. Yeah. Thank you, Les.
It's fucking Les's fault again. Which, like I said back in the beginning of the story, I want to acknowledge my friend Jacob and Mickelson, who, there's always somebody else.
Of course.
Who made it possible. I could thank Richard Barron. I could thank my father for introducing me to Yossi, who owned Cafe Orlin, who introduced me to Chef Maggie, who was best friends. Yeah.
Just one hits the other one.
The whole thing goes back to the early 70s in New York City, or the mid 70s, by the late 70s, actually, because of my dad's friend having Cafe Orlin. but Les put that energy into being sure that I was involved in shows, which lead to greater things. And that was he was always about not the thing, but what it led to, the means to the end, to keep going, the progression, and doing the work, not like expecting it to rain gold. No, it's like the reality. Like he didn't make shit ton of money. He was always fucking living hand to mouth himself,
Yeah.
in his overcluttered apartment that was leaking from the ceiling all the time, and like you know
Yeah.
just covered in art and posters everywhere that he kept at his mother's house in the boroughs there in his mother's basement, like Giger art in the leaky basement somewhere in like Brooklyn or Queens or something. Um, yeah, yeah. He made a lot of things in my life so much richer, you know,
Yeah.
and he was always supporting me. And even when we had a falling out after a while, like I wasn't making any money and the shows were, I started to feel like I was like a peripheral or something. Like I didn't want to be part of an entourage or like under the Giger banner or like, the umbrella of Giger artists and stuff like that. Like I wanted to be the forefront. I wanted to be in the front. So I started to do work with other people, which those other people started to get possessive over me and didn't want me working with other people. So we kind of had a gap of time where we stopped working. But after all that went down and then disintegrated, he like immediately was ready to start working with me again. And
Yeah.
like,
Well, in that time when that happened, it really didn't even seem like it was like a because I think I was around for a bit of that,
you
and
were there around the
it
whole
didn't even
time.
seem like it was really that long of a gap between.
No, not long. Like
Yeah.
because there were like in the beginning of working with the other gallery, I was still doing stuff with Les, and actually Les had a really bad experience with the gallery because naturally that gallery had a bad experience with everybody. Nobody,
Yeah.
steamrolled everybody. Everybody who
Yeah.
like ran into that witch would like be turned to stone. It's like fucking Medusa. And so he steered clear, but I was then under the sort of like the claws of it, and I was like, oh, I'm making money, I'm doing shows, I'm making exhibitions, and I'm become a featured artist rather than like under the umbrella of. And I
Yeah.
needed to do that as a young
Yeah.
artist, like to
Well,
be more in the forefront.
you became the breadwinner. I mean, in my eyes, for
Well,
that guy.
I don't know, like there were other artists that were making a lot of money for the gallery, but I was definitely putting a lot of work and effort and energy into the energy of the gallery as well as my own work, so that the gallery had that energy,
Yeah.
and that attention. And because I was a big part of that, I was able to also be in the forefront, had some of the best wall space, and I was always present, so I was able to help push those sales through. So my sales were consistent and blah blah blah. I was doing what it takes to
Yeah.
to stay ahead as a non-established, not money-backed artist because I had no trust fund and I wasn't working with an established gallery. I was working with a fucking underground gallery who wanted to be established.
Mm, mm.
But it was my opportunity to do it because nobody else was doing it. It was like I stepped in. There was an opening. It was like a job opening. All
Yeah.
needed is an artist ready to fucking work their ass to the bone and you know sa- sacrifice everything and dedicate their entire life to this. Like, yeah, I'm up for it. I'm not
Yeah.
tied down to
I mean,
anything or anyone, you know. And then they tied me up and tied me down, and then they
yeah.
cut me loose and throw me out of the back of the plane, without a fucking parachute, cocksucker. Yeah, fucking always be mad.
Yeah.
Always be
Yeah.
mad. You know?
Yeah.
Fuck, man. Fucking assholes. You know
Just
who you are.
trying to think of the name of the fucking guy who jumped out of a plane with all that money that disappeared.
Oh yeah. Well, with what money did I was I
Well, that's what
deployed?
I was. Well,
I
that
wanted
was going to be the
disappeared.
joke. I was going to say it was the opposite.
Yeah, my parachute was full with like forks, knives, and
Yeah, with
spoons.
rocks,
Yeah.
with boulders and chains and shit.
Oh God. Anyway. Yeah, but Les and I we picked it up like without a beat, without missing a beat right
Yeah.
afterwards. Always he was always willing to work with me, and he never tied me down. He like our loyalty to each other was an unspoken loyalty and understanding, you
Yeah.
know. And he never had me sign any contract. He never asked me to. He never asked me, be sure to let me know. Be sure to give me my piece. Be sure this. He trusted,
Yeah, it was
and
just
if
this
you
open.
crossed him, yeah. And if you
Yeah.
did him wrong, that would be it. That would be the end of it. He would give you the opportunity to fuck him over because his relationship was based on trust that he believed in. If he believed in you, he believed in himself
Yeah.
to trust you. And some people did cross him. Some people, and he wound up having bad relationships. But he never put on airs about it. It was never phony. He would never ever hold me back from getting something that could be bigger and better. And the same thing. I got in trouble even with the other gallery with working with the California gallery. Oh God, there's so many galleries I don't want to mention their name. So it's like,
I
okay,
know. I
Gallery
know.
A and Gallery B, I told Gallery B that, I've been working with Gallery A and they've been doing so much, so I need to give them a cut. And then Gallery B was all pissed. No, they get nothing. We get everything. We've done more than them. And then I'd say, well, sorry, Gallery B, I got to go with Gallery A. And then Gallery A throw me out the back of the plane.
Yeah.
That was the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
But Les
Yeah.
never confronted me with that shit. He never made me
Yeah.
feel that I was tied down or obligatory, like I owed him anything. And anything that I got through with him, of course, he got his share. It was never a lot. It was never, you know, it was all experience. Like my riches with Les Barany were the kind of experiences, the money that I made that I no longer have, that I don't even know what to show for it, is nothing. Is
Yeah.
emptiness. And
Yeah.
a lot of these people that I was making this money with, what they're doing now has nothing to do with art. So it goes to show that what they were after from me was nothing to do with me or art. Where what he was after
I don't even
from
know. I don't
me,
even know what that person's doing. But
you know,
but getting back to the less side of things, exactly that's the type of relationship, even with just friendships, that I like to have. It's an unspoken word.
right?
It's not even a handshake. It's just this unspoken word of that. If you're a true friend, then
Mhm.
there's this loyalty and there's this
Right.
understanding. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
as long as we're friends, there's this respect.
And
And you don't fuck that shit up.
right. And that lack that the lack of confrontation about it, like without always being like told, hey, be sure, don't fuck me over, don't fuck me over, you wouldn't fuck me over, would you? It's like almost makes you want to fuck them over because
Well,
like,
also
do you
also
not
goes to
trust me
show you
anymore? It's like,
how much it also goes to show you how much that they have fucked other people over previously, because if they're so concerned of them getting
right.
fucked over, that means that
Yeah, I
they're
feel
very
like,
comfortable
yeah,
fucking other people over.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's that whole fucking
It's like,
psychology to that shit.
are you afraid of me or
Yeah.
are you guilty
I had
from your
somebody
own
that I knew that
actions?
was like that too. That was constantly always trying to assure, uh, either assure me that things were going to go a certain way,
Right,
or concern that I would go a different way. And it's like,
right.
and I should have seen that, you know, a couple months into our friendship.
Whatever, man.
Unfortunately, I
Yeah,
didn't. But
it
like,
happens.
but
It
like,
happens.
it's that idea of like, yeah, those are the exact people that you keep fucking clear of,
Yeah,
because these are the people, that's that's why I have I always have a really really hard time of like, a lot of times of like, do what you say. Like that's
right.
my kind of thing too. It's like if you say one thing, then do it. You know, don't and I understand shit comes up and shit happens or whatever and stuff like that.
Right.
But like, if you come off like, I don't even know, like just like saying all this other stuff, but then you
Listen,
turn around and
listen. I
you're different.
understand if some people have been fucked over and they get worried, but if every single time after many years of you proving yourself, obviously your loyalty, you're still questioning whether or
Yeah.
not, then it makes me wonder how your brain operates, like what you see as a possible norm, where I see as an impossibility at this point. It's like you would have to do something to me so fucked up for me to do that to you. So,
Mm-hmm.
have you done something fucked up, or
That
are
I don't
you
know.
that person?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
that was never an issue with him. He just
Yeah.
went with the flow.
Yeah,
He
well, it
wasn't
was like that
afraid
whole
of getting
thing,
fucked
that
over.
just that loyalty of just
Yeah.
knowing that, like, hey, we're gonna be friends, and you know, I'll give you plenty of rope, but
Yeah.
you know, whether
You
or
could
not you
choose to
squeeze
hang
yourself
yourself.
with it,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and it's like, and then it's like, you know, but you know, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
and that's the way to
So
be. That's
it
like,
is.
well, that's just old school shit. You know what I mean?
It
That's
is.
like old
Yeah,
school relationships,
it is.
and that
It is.
where
It's
things are,
wise.
you know, yeah, where things are, you don't need to sign something. So it's about the handshake, or it's about the whatever, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's more of a human connection than like what can I get out of you, greedy, sniveling, because it's based on falsehoods to begin with, or there's not any real truth and honesty behind what you're building upon. And in retrospect, I see that. I worry about that when I start new relationships now a lot more than I
Absolutely.
used to.
Well,
You
yeah, you're
know,
a lot much more on guard, I'm sure, for sure.
yeah, I think I'm a lot more, like, wiser. So my guard is, I have a better security system than I used to.
Yeah.
Okay, every window, every door. I've got cameras, I've got lights. Which could be,
Yeah,
keeping me.
you might be a little bit too
Yeah,
over.
I could be, but granted,
You might have too many ring doorbells or
nobody's
whatever.
coming around my house anyway. It doesn't matter. The only thing setting it off are squirrels, raccoons, and like maybe an owl. You
Set
know,
up that tripwire.
yeah. It's just a deer in the backyard. It's definitely not a gallerist coming around looking to see if I can do a show.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean,
that kind
that's a
of
whole.
fucking true heart, loyalty, belief, and honesty and trust, and that you can depend on, like, no matter what project I would get involved with him, I believed that he would make it happen. He would never misrepresent me. He would never say that I'm something I'm not. He would never make anything up about me to sell my
Wouldn't
work.
beat around the bush either, you know.
No, he
If it
wouldn't
didn't
ever
work
try
out,
to sell my
or
work.
if you weren't going to work out for that one thing,
Right,
like an artist, not you in general, but
right.
somebody who's not going to work out, he'll let you know.
Yeah,
It's not a project for you,
yeah,
you know.
exactly. He would not approach you if it didn't fit in, and
Yeah,
they would never pretend you're something else to make you fit in,
yeah,
you know, which some
for sure.
places would do to make it seem status
Absolutely.
quo or make it fit, to make
Yeah,
it fit.
fluff you up.
Yeah, he wasn't this one wannabe fucking tastemaker bullshit, like hoity-toity. He didn't need to be the center of attention. He just wanted to be behind the scenes, make it happen. He
Yeah,
became the center of attention naturally
yeah,
because he's that interesting. He was that commanding of a presence, and he brought shit to the table. And he wasn't afraid. He was you know able to get you shows hanging with the head leaders of chapters of Hell's Angels in New York. You're showing alongside with these people. These were his crew.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Or get you
so
fucking in the fucking Giger Museum
yeah,
or
I
whatever.
mean, he
Yeah,
was he was he was rolling with a serious crew, so he didn't need to pretend to be important.
yeah,
He just was.
isn't that a special thing too, where it's like you're there's no airs that need to be put on because you're
Yeah,
comfortable with your own fucking skin that you're living within,
yeah,
and that you're walking in,
yeah,
you're secure in who you are, and that's
yeah.
not enough. People don't. Oh, I don't know. Whatever.
Listen, it's
No.
not, maybe it's not encouraged enough, or maybe it's not recognized enough, or maybe it's not taught enough. I don't know. He was from a different world, a different school. He's been around for a long time. We used to joke that he was, how old is Les? I think he's like
Yeah. Yeah.
150 or 270 years old.
Yeah.
He's been around for a long time, and so with that comes an old school of thought. You know,
Sure.
and so a lot of times, especially when it came to politics, his perspective and his philosophies were also from an older world. And this sort of, I dare say, punk attitude, without punk not being like, I'm not talking about spiked bracelets and
Yeah.
listening to Rancid. I'm talking about, like, fuck the system
Yeah.
and fuck everyone in it. including the president that you like, because fuck all presidents, fuck all, and go with the one that's making the biggest mess of the system. And so a lot of times he would side with a more sort of hard-lined conservative attitude, which got him in a lot of arguments, including with me. I even kicked him out of my apartment once. Not because I was mad. I was just sick of hearing about it. I could not deal with it. And it was in a situation where
All
it's
right,
like, we're trying to
enough
have a
of
nice
this.
dinner. I'm like, you know what, Les? Not now. This has
Yeah,
to go out. It was at a time I was very vulnerable, and I asked him to leave. You know,
yeah.
of course, it was not. I think I've kicked Travis out of my apartment.
You
I've
kicked me
kicked
out
you out of. Like, I kicked
to
Sobchak
start
out
a
of the
poker
apartment.
game.
All the best people have been kicked out of
Yeah,
my
yeah,
apartment.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's when you know you're special.
Oh God, you're definitely one of my best friends. I think all my best friends have been kicked out of the apartment. Except like
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
maybe Colin has not yet, or Eduardo, but they're just too
yeah,
damn nice.
yeah.
Give
And
him a
so, oh,
chance.
I
So
think
I
Sasha
picked
was
subject.
kicked
Yeah,
out.
he was blackout sassy once.
Yeah,
He almost got a fist fight with my cat Silo. He was like, I'm like, he was so drunk. I'm like, all right, dude.
you want to punch my cat?
He wanted to fight. He wanted to fight the cat. Anyway, yeah, yeah. It's heartbreaking. I'm very sad. I'm very sad he's gone. I wanted to do more. I know he wanted to do more, but
Yeah, he was talking about that He'd be talking about that project, right?
yeah, I mean, he was just
Well,
starting like to get involved in a lot more acting. He was part of a few movie projects with some brilliant animators and filmmakers, and was always working with great musicians. Jonathan Mover and guys from Celtic Frost
Jonathan
and
Davis from Korn, he did that whole deal with the
well, yeah,
Jonathan's mic stand.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We got that going. I mean, he
Yeah,
was involved with a lot of shit. There's not a lot of my young
Danzig.
professional life that he has not been a part of,
Yeah,
or forming me. Like when he started working with me, I was fresh, like super green. I was just making
yeah.
art, doing whatever I can. No real direction, voice, or understanding of the narrative of
Just taking it all, just
working
taking
with.
anything that came your way. It's just like
Yeah, and
yes,
he was feeding it to me. Like he
yeah,
exposed me to things so I saw outside my tunnel vision. I was able to get involved in things that I never would have been involved in or had exposed to that just made me. Not
yeah,
made me like, hey, I was me, now I got all this money and power. No, it made me character, helped me build character. He helped me having that side of him that I disagreed with is important too, because I didn't just disagree with him, but I listened to him. We had arguments and
yeah.
discussions, and I'm glad because I want to know other perspective and side of things. I want to know what other people think, even when I fucking disagree. Because who the fuck am I to think that I know already the right fucking way to do anything?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you always think that your way is the right way, then there's something fucking wrong.
Yeah,
You know?
you've stopped. You've stopped growing.
Yeah,
You've stopped.
yeah, exactly.
You stopped opening yourself up. And he was an incredible grounder for me. Brought me
Yeah,
down like reality with my aloof dreams and stuff. He didn't smash my dreams, but he brought me down to earth to realize
yeah,
the type of work it takes, the expectations, the reality of things, and how to communicate with other artists of different cultures and languages and to do business right, you know?
yeah,
Like when he saw
yeah.
the first contract that I got from that other gallery the first time, he's like, I would never, ever, ever give one of my
I
artists
do.
this.
I think I remember you telling me about
It's like
this.
this. He's like, don't sign that, And
Yeah,
he opened my eyes up to the idea of embracing the contract, but revising it.
yeah,
So he's like,
making, yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah,
what you take out.
yeah,
Like, and me in my head at that time is I don't. It didn't automatically click. Why don't I return this contract with my changes? It was more like I was worried. Oh, if I don't sign this, I won't get the
yeah,
show.
exactly.
You
They're
know,
not gonna want to work with me, and
right?
oh, I might be a missed opportunity and all that shit. Yeah, I know.
No,
It's
he
funny how you
educated me.
fucking how you learn and how you grow and you understand. It's got to be better if it's best for both of us,
Right.
And
And he
it's
educated me taught me to have some balls, you know?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
if a gallery's approaching you, they want something from you.
absolutely.
So stick up for yourself and recognize your own worth in that.
Yeah,
In
and
that,
that,
don't. There's a time to compromise, of course, but when it comes to things like contracts, that contract is not written specifically for you. Is written for you and the guy downstairs. Same
yeah.
contract. The guy
And at the
driving a
end of the day, it was
taxi.
written for the gallery or for
Yeah,
whoever
to protect the gallery.
it was for their best interest, not
Yeah,
for fucking anybody else.
exactly.
Yeah.
What the fuck they know me? They know my interests. What the fuck they know what
Well,
I
it's all
need,
yeah. Also, too, it's just
So
they
you
don't.
have to,
I mean, for the most part, they don't even really give a fuck. It's more about protecting them than it is
yeah,
protecting.
and establishing dominance
And
also.
I'm not saying particularly with that one place. I'm just anybody. I mean,
Yeah,
my
yeah, and
my
I've had
last
that experience with
like
many galleries. I've had very similar like
yeah.
situation with
Anybody.
they
I just dealt with the
wanted.
labels like that, where it's just
Yeah,
completely within their interest, and which obviously makes sense, but no can do
yeah,
unless
you
you
have to
can
push
devise
back.
this. Yeah,
Yeah, because who's really like especially labels and stuff that you were dealing with, you know, chances are that that contract was looked over and prepared by a lawyer. So you're
oh
not
yeah,
dealing with
yeah,
anybody who's thinking in any creative like idea of the artist's
yeah,
mind. This is
yeah,
like,
yeah,
how much blood can we get from this fucking stone because we want to bleed them dry.
yeah.
We want to get everything
Went
we
back
want.
and forth 7 times, I think.
I think every fucking gallery or whatever initially starts out. It's like, how can we get this for free? You
Of
know?
course.
And then you have
Yeah.
to be like, wait a second, okay, free? It's like, all right,
Well,
50, half.
yeah,
And now I want
yeah,
half of it. It's like, half?
yeah.
Okay, but why half?
Well,
What are you
and which
doing?
also became the standard for anybody, whether they were just a
Yeah,
gallery starting out that had no clientele
yeah,
or any ground to step on, up until a fucking place like you know Gagosian or whoever. You know what I mean? Like that's what it
yeah.
really started with these upper tier galleries, and then somehow it ended up for like the bar that has a gallery attached to it or
I
something.
think, I think even these upper tier galleries and stuff like that, I think their contracts, like, there's nothing standard about them. Every artist that they're doing contracts with is always very personalized, based on,
Oh, I think so
on
too.
knowledge of that they're going to be making money together, and
Yeah.
it's a negotiation from the get-go.
That's
Where
also too though.
these middle tier galleries like that we've been working with, I feel like they've got the cookie cutter downloaded off the internet type contract, like run a gallery 101 for dummies, like just go right for half, go straight for half. Like, really, does every gallery pay the same rent? Does every gallery have the same PR machine? Does every gallery, supply the same type of food and wine for the opening? Does every gallery have the same amount of press? Does every gallery have the same venue
The
space,
exposure and everything. Yeah,
square
yeah,
footage, walking traffic? Like, no.
yeah.
So why are you all starting with half? Why should the gallery that has the best fucking foot traffic and 30-foot ceilings and floor to ceiling windows with gorgeous
Yeah.
painted
Have
walls
a big
get the
roster,
same
have a huge
percentage?
email list and all that shit.
Yeah, as this like 7-foot ceiling basement somewhere in fucking Bushwick.
Yeah,
Like, why are they getting the same money? That
yeah.
doesn't make
This other
sense, you
place,
stupid
exactly. This other
cunt.
place is just starting out. Yeah,
Yeah, get the
but,
fuck out of here, piece of
yeah,
shit. Yeah. So
yeah, yeah.
I need some direction. Another glass?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Whoop. Another one to less.
Another one less.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. One of
Ah,
my one of my favorite things, it might be silly, but one of my favorite things about Les was always running into him in the outside world, and there were always gallery events or usually always gallery stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes a bar or a club or something like that. Uh, but his hey, I got something for you. Come here. The thing of that, and he'd give you a Giger ring, or he'd give you
Yeah.
a Giger pin, or he'd give
Yeah.
he'd always give you something, and that
Right.
and just, and then just keep going, and then you
Yeah.
talk later on in the night, whatever.
Right.
Like,
Totally.
oh shit,
He was very generous.
super
He was always
generous.
giving out his wares. I mean, it was also his great pickup line. That's how I'm sure he
Oh yeah,
scored a lot of action. But that's
yeah,
what fucking man. That's part of the gig.
yeah,
That's what
yeah.
that's
But it would be dudes too, it wouldn't just be
sure.
wouldn't just be
Oh,
girls or whatever.
it would
Yeah,
spread. He knew that even though Giger is an established artist and stuff, keeping the people wearing his stuff. It's like
yeah,
he was doing him a service. He was doing Giger a fucking service. He was doing you a service, giving you some goods. And because it was what he believed. He wanted that to continue. That
yeah.
the vibe. He wanted you to be dressed in the stuff that he represented. So because he would see
Thing I loved
himself in
about
that.
too, where it was like you always knew that they were probably like the 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 first kind of printings or whatever, because
Right.
there
Yeah.
were a lot of times they were always, because he would show you too. He would there was a, I'm sorry I forget his name, but there was a really amazing sculptor that would do a lot of Giger stuff that was connected through Les or whatever. But I think Les was the one who introduced me to this guy at one point and was like, oh, he's actually doing the new Giger, this and that. And
I really need to be sure we get his name. Is it Livingston? Is it? Oh God.
well, that might
There's
be
Paul
right.
Komoda and
Wasn't Paul.
the Eli.
Eli.
Yeah.
That's it. Eli. Yeah.
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 I think it's Eli Livingston. I think his name is Livingston, or I'm just
Yeah.
thinking of like. But
It's
yeah,
definitely Eli.
yeah.
Yeah.
Eli.
Yeah. But so a lot of times you're like, oh, is this like a prototype or something? Or,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Because I remember the first time he gave something to somebody that I knew was a pro. And I don't even know, this is like way back in the day. So
I'm
maybe,
sure. Yeah.
he was
Of
eyeing her
course.
out or whatever, right?
Of
Scoping her
course
out.
he was.
And it was that lit. I think it was that lit too. And I was so jealous. I was like, oh, it was that pin with the hands and like the wings and shit like that.
Yeah.
And
The emblem for a secret society. It's called.
yes. And I was like, is that what it is? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that's so dope, or whatever. And then I was like,
Yeah.
Les gave you that? She's like, yeah. I was
Yeah,
all jealous and shit.
The majority of the jewels that he gave out was all like ladies' jewelry, necklaces, and pins and stuff like that. The masculine stuff he also had too, but mostly the feminine stuff because it was a better conversation starter. He'd rather have that conversation started with a beautiful woman than with like
Of course.
some goth dude.
Yeah.
Some buff guy. But he also knew how to make us goth dudes happy too.
Yeah.
It was all about that. It's always all about that. He introduced, speaking of jewelry, he also introduced me to Axel Stock, who is
Yeah.
the guy who does all these
Painted in
crazy
blood.
rings. And actually, he would do his paintings in blood, but he was also very well known for his jewels. This was one of Axel's
Yes.
kind of like
There you
infamous
go.
style.
I didn't know you had his stuff. I didn't know you had a ring of his.
Well, I wound up doing a photo shoot with him and his wife at his place in the Lower East Side at one point because he introduced me to Axel. We became kind of buddies, and I asked him to be my I was doing a tarot deck, and I wanted him to be in the magician in the tarot deck.
So that dude looks amazing.
And actually, his wife was the Hierophant, I believe, and who has both of those is what's up with Erwin? Erwin Chofin has both those pieces. I gifted him with both those pieces because Erwin has done so much for me over the years as well. Like he did a whole catalog thing and wound up giving me hundreds of copies. And he was just a good friend. He was also a collector for years. And when I was moving from New York to to Boston, I actually gifted both of those pieces to him. He has both of them. But Axel was somebody whose jewelry I I used to see in New York City when I was growing up in Rockland County outside of New York. I would go with my friends into the city in the 80s. This is like
Trashy
mid.
vaudeville and stuff.
Well, we would go there, but there was a store on the west side called Saint Magnifique on I believe Bleecker Street, and Saint Magnifique was a tiny hole in the wall spot that was floor to ceiling jewelry, rings and necklaces of all, some old, some new, and Axel had a lot of his jewelry featured there. So I never bought it or was interested in it then, but it was kind of like a visual icon of the time, of the early 80s, of gross New York. It was right next above the Scrap Bar, which was an infamous bar too, where like Guns N' Roses would hang out and stuff. Like it was like an infamous 80s metal bar.
Where,
The Scrap
what
Bar.
area was this?
I think McDougal Street is on McDougal Street.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So it was like right across the street from Mamun's Falafel, which was the best falafel in New York since the 70s. And the Scrap Bar was across the street, and there was Saint Magnifique. And so it was like this whole, and it was next door to Second Coming Records, around the corner from Bleecker Bob's Records. So it was a destination place, you know. And Cafe Wah was right there too, you know, where Jimi Hendrix was discovered by the guy from the Animals, blah, blah, blah. History lesson all in one.
I
And
didn't know that.
and so the just the look of this stuff was going all the way back to my early 80s, you know, high school days. And flash forward another like couple decades and thousands of experiences later, I wound up at this guy's house photographing him because Les introduced me to the guy. You know, just like this guy like single-handedly
Les knew everybody, especially
got
in
me
that,
involved in
you know?
so much stuff, and was involved, like really, 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 like it. It's fun to talk about, but at the same time, I get like more. I understand it, like what a loss, not just to me, because he's affected so many people this way. A lot of people have lost this friendship, this kind of connection, and I also am sad about like all the possible things that would have still happened, you know, from his doings. And even though a lot of times he was up against it because some of the younger upstarts and the younger people who didn't understand his mentality and were from a newer school of thought, which didn't embrace this old school of outlawish, anarchists, punk vibe, that real punk vibe, not dressed up punk vibe, not surface value
not
stuff.
just wearing the fucking the boots and the hairdo or whatever.
The reissued T-shirts. It was like the real fucking thing. It was about loyalty.
Before punk was even a thing.
Yeah, it was the pure attitude of it, like kicking against the pricks for real. Really, just like disagreeing with the norm and being a part of that sort of underground, embracing it. Yeah, it saddens me. It saddens me he's gone. Like, and I barely got a chance like to really tell him. I mean, I did have the opportunity. Like, he wasn't speaking. There was like a small group of people that were with him at the end, and he wasn't speaking. He wasn't accepting visitors. And the person who was the liaison asked me and whoever was on the short email list of people, you know, if you had something to say to Les, say it now. This is your last chance. And it was so much urgency in that I panicked. I'm like, how do you say goodbye?
Yeah.
Without like, without saying goodbye, you know, without making it about goodbye. How do you like? It's almost like,
what do you even say?
Is it a roast? Is it a tribute? Is it like? I want to inject like love and humor. Like,
you don't want to make it sad either. Like, you don't want to make.
I don't want to bring him down. He's already going through so much stuff that I don't want to make it like, I don't want to make it arbitrary. Like, not just like ciao. Like, I also, how do I really speak my heart?
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounded like you did what was, you know, what was right and what was needed to be said. And
I told him, like, you can't break it down, paraphrase it. I didn't want to go on forever. I didn't want to think about it too long. I didn't want to overthink it because then I would be like want to talk about everything. I have so much to say. I had so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
I wanted to let him know. So I
So
had
many
to very,
memories. So many things. So many things happen. No.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted just to, try to get to the heart of it, like the core of what it was. And I
Well,
think,
from his response, it sounds like you did. You know.
yeah, he got where I was coming from, and his reaction to the person to tell me is David knows how I feel about him.
Yeah. 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 That's special, man.
Cut.
Yeah. Definitely, man. I mean, it's fucking heavy, man. Mm.
I just know that like when he decided he's going to his decision, he was going to just go out. He was done. He was done fighting, and I know that he was like with very good people and a very good support team who was like has the healthcare people who were taking very good care of him, and he had holding his hand, very close to him, very good people who I've also met. He introduced me to these people. They're part of my life too, and so I know that he couldn't ask for a
Yeah,
better
surrounded by love and positivity
audience. Yeah,
and good
and yeah,
vibes.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so I tried desperately not to dwell on trying to imagine what he was feeling. Even just having to hear or having to have him, explain to me how he feels like
Yeah. Yeah.
breaks my heart because I always knew he loved me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he always knew
Absolutely.
I loved
Absolutely.
him.
And and that's the best. That's the best response that you could ever get because exactly like you said, you always you've always known. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
you know.
and I know that's how he feels about all those people that he's close to.
Hmm.
And even with all that harshness, that bitter, that grit, that grinding, you know, it for him it was all about love for people that
Yeah.
he had,
Yeah.
the love for that
Yeah.
life, that
Yeah.
love for that
Yeah.
staying up and going to round the clock diner, or where actually the
Well,
yakitori place is.
a lot of that grit and gruffness is because of exactly what you're saying. It's because I love this shit so much, and I love who you are so much that if
Yeah,
you're
and he's a
straying or
hardened guy.
doing this or whatever, then that's why I'm fucking pissed, man. That's why I'm angry.
And yeah, and he's a hardened guy, from life.
Yeah.
Life weathered him
From a whole different
because
time.
because
I mean,
yeah, because he also decided to live hard too. There's a lot of drugs, alcohol, late night excitement, rock and roll, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was his thing,
yeah.
and he lived it. And art. See, I mean, he was the one who showed me that sex, drugs, rock and roll, and art was like that art was
A
part
true
of that.
a
You
true
know,
thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it wasn't
You
just
don't just have to be a musician. You can also be a painter or a sculptor and
yeah.
be
It's like, hey, but what
with
about
style.
us? We're part of this too. And he was a
Yeah.
real like visionary for that, and he was able to, he recognized talents and he elevated them here. When even if he didn't fully believe in it, but he cared about the person. If he didn't think about their art, there was a lot of art that he promoted that was bad art, but he loved the person. But the
Yeah.
person was in that art. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there's
Yeah.
like maybe it's not a cup of tea, but he recognized the person in the art. Whether or
Yeah.
not the art was something as elevated as something else that he was showing didn't matter. It was all about like
Yeah, it made
it's
it
it
that
was
much more special because how much he loved the
yeah
person behind.
the art was secondary. Like it was an important part of it, but it wasn't what made him choose who he worked with or who he lived with, who he spent
Mm-hmm.
his time with. And that was an enlightenment for me,
Yeah, I mean,
and
didn't he do a
great
whole book just
education
about hot rods or something like that at one
of
point?
cars. Yeah, he did all about cars. Actually, Gold Mine
Yeah,
Shithouse is in
yeah, and
that
it's just
book.
because like, which was completely. I mean, I think I did see the book, but I don't really remember it. But like, just the reason why I bring it up because it seemed like it was just such a different. It wasn't what you would expect from Les. You know what I mean? But
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I love this shit too.
But that was his thing. Like
I'm passionate about this.
he would find commonalities in art and artists that
Yes.
he followed, and he would harp on them. There was another book he never got to make, but one that he wanted was all about beds. He wanted to do a book of artist rendition of the bed. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
okay, because there's,
Such great concept.
but that's him, man. He would
Yeah.
find like the not maybe the supporting actor of every painting, like he would give recognition to that commonality that isn't as noticeable, like in the
Yeah.
shadows of things. He would recognize, he saw the whole picture.
Yeah.
He's very, very good eye. He comes from a world of advertising, and but he didn't use that blood sucking, money like sucking part of advertising. He would use the mental triggers and visual triggers and understanding
Mhm. The
of
connection and
commonalities. Yeah, the connection, commonalities of things, and expose that through art. You know, he had that kind of head.
mhm.
It just exploring, adventurous. It would go beyond. Like he'd see something's like, this is the product. It'd be actually this product opens up to this. Like he sees the next step. His brain
Yeah.
was always going like the further steps. There was no end to a painting or a show. There was like, this is just okay. What's this opening up?
Yeah.
What is this leading
What's
to?
next?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Not next because like we're done with this. Next because this is a birth of something else. This is an
Yeah. Absolutely.
ongoing process. This is an evolving process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And just talking about him, look how he inspires an understanding of art. Like
Hmm.
he was a soil that blossomed and grew
Yeah. Well,
this perspective.
it got you always so excited. I mean, that was the thing with what I was saying earlier, but like always hoping at the hangouts, like, oh, I think like thinking to myself,
Yeah,
you think Les is gonna come by, or sometimes even like Les contact me early tonight. He might stop by and be getting
yeah,
all
yeah,
like fucking
yeah,
like that fucking vibration in you, and because
yeah,
it's like what are we gonna talk
yeah.
about?
Because he would
What's
come
gonna
in
happen?
gangbusters. He would always come in gangbusters, and you'd
Yeah,
be sitting at the
yeah.
table maybe with like Marcus or Travis or somebody. Somebody
Always bring
is,
something too. When he
yeah,
always bring something.
it
Always bring
always,
beer or something, like shit
or
that you would,
food.
shit that he wouldn't even drink, or food
Right.
or something. Like
No,
it was just
he
because he
was a
didn't want to come in
gentleman.
empty-handed or whatever. Yeah,
An absolute
yeah,
gentleman,
yeah,
without having to put on any sort of like a suit or anything. He was a fucking gentleman. And
yeah,
you couldn't wait for him to get into a discussion with somebody else about politics. Like not
yeah,
you. Like you can't wait like him and
no,
Marcus to go at it
yeah,
or
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Even well, yeah, fucking yeah, right. So you're like, oh shit, right.
Yeah,
But the other thing was too is that the idea of not the idea, but what you reminded me of is also too you getting super excited because you're like, oh, this person never met Les before, so it's like,
right.
and they were an
Yeah,
artist or whatever, or even if
right.
they weren't an artist, but
Yeah,
like if they were an artist, it was even more exciting,
yeah.
and if they were into like that
Giger.
scene
Yeah,
too was like
yeah.
really exciting
About to get your
because
mind
they
blown.
didn't know that he was coming over and they didn't even
Yeah,
know who he was, so then it's
right.
like, oh man, it got, you know what I mean, and it's like, and then
Yeah,
you got to be the fly on the wall by watching like this whole
exactly.
thing it develop
Because
and
he's always had the potential of opening up somebody's world
yeah,
even wider, like
yeah,
enriching. He's gonna peel you open like a pomegranate, and he's gonna pluck every little fucking seed out. He's going to expose you to something. He's gonna open you up if you've got it, if you got the fucking guts, if you
yeah,
can
yeah,
withstand it.
yeah, Yeah. Well, like he was like the awakening, you know, like your mindset of what you thought about the way that maybe the industry worked or something. I don't know.
Some
I don't know.
harsh
He would kind
realities.
of like fucking, he would brush those leaves aside and show you the path of,
Yeah. So
yeah,
some truth into things,
the truth. Yeah,
based
yeah,
on experience, not just based on his philosophy or
yeah,
opinion. It was like, well, because he fucking experienced it, because he worked with these people. He's
yeah.
been through this. I'll
I
tell
mean,
you.
he blew my mind about industry shit that I wouldn't talk about here because it's private. But
Right.
like I talked to him about certain industry things, and I was like, what, and like was kind of this big awakening, and I was like, fuck, that's crazy.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
was good for that. He did a service to a lot of artists by
yeah.
exposing them, whether or not they were willing to accept it, or some people cringed from it and ran away, or some people denied it, some people embraced it. I didn't always embrace what he had to show me. I had to sort of like learn on my own sometimes that
Sure.
like the
You
harsh
got to
realities
stumble
are
and
that
fall
harsh.
or
Yeah.
climb your own mountain.
But I want to give one more quick regale you with one more quick memory of with less experience. Um, One night I was bartending at Hi-Fi. It was one of those. It was one of those like non-eventful nights, where it's probably maybe Wednesday night,
Yeah, it
where
wasn't a weekend.
I'm gonna stay open till 4 a.m. But it's like 7 people in the bar, and I know
Oh.
6 of them. You know, and I remember it was me. It was Gibby. Remember my roommate Gibby,
Yeah.
who
No, no,
um,
no, 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 no.
he had the tattoo neck, and he had a lot of tattoos, and he um he was in a band called The Trouble from Boston.
I don't know. I don't. Well, did I know you back then? Maybe
I
not.
think you might have. I don't remember. You must have.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not. I mean, I was still with Darla at the time, and I remember that we
Yeah. No,
met
I didn't
sort of
know. I didn't
towards
know you.
the end of my relationship with Darla. It was already kind of like, but anyway, it was one of those nights, and I was outside having a cigarette with Gibby, and we were all standing outside smoking on the street. The bar was pretty much empty because we were all just standing out there smoking. And a cab pulls up, and Les is in the back of the cab. And coming up the street, up down Avenue A up towards 14th Street, was like a group of like 4 or 5 kids, maybe 20 to 25-year-old, whatever, young, drunk, blah blah, and they're just loud
What
and
time?
drunk and
What time would you say it is roughly?
roughly, I would say 1:32 a.m.
Okay, so it's okay. Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
On a weekday, not like a weekend.
yeah.
So most of the city's quiet. Most of the things are closed except for the pizza joint, falafel joint, and bodegas
Yeah.
and the bars. And so cab pulls up. These drunk kids are walking. One of the drunk kids decides like to go off the sidewalk, jump on the bumper of the car and on the hood, and jump on the hood of the cab and like yeah, And the cab driver is like, "What are you doing?" And Les is in the back, trying to pay, and he's like yells something like he's like, "You're a fucking idiot, you fucking, you stupid little piece of shit, what are you doing?" Like this, so fucking disrespectful. Jump on this cabbie's hood, you drunk little
Yeah,
punk,
yeah.
you little fucking yuppie, you little whatever. And so Les gets out of the cab, and they walk like a few steps this way, and they yell something back, something, old man, yeah, shit, man, fuck you, old man, some shit. And at that point, we're all just standing there like amazed, like
Uh,
what is going on? This is crazy. And Les is just a few feet away, and then they yell and they curse at Les, and Les kind of like turns and looks at us, gives us like this glare, with a cigarette in his mouth, takes his cowboy boot off his foot, walks up to one of the kids who turned around, walk away, and takes the heel of the boot and clocks this kid in the back of the head. And it's like a group of 5, and all of a sudden we're like, it's on, it's like fucking,
we might be getting into a big fight.
yeah, there's a brawl going down, but Les took care of business right then and there. He showed that kid, it's like, you're gonna yell at some random old guy after jumping on a car like that. this random old guy is going to take off his fucking shoe. And
Set
you know,
you
those back
straight.
of those cowboy boots with those
Yeah.
wooden heels.
No shit. That's wooden fucking heel.
We heard that thing connect to that guy's head. And, you know, they just like stunned the kid. He didn't knock him out. They fucking just like took off. We're
Yeah.
just like, fuck, man. And it all just ended very quickly. And then was
I bet you
done.
everybody had shots after that.
Oh, we went into there and we all had some drinks. Like, unless it's here.
Oh my god.
That's the kind of guy he was. He did not give a
I
fuck.
forgot. Yeah, I remember you telling me that before. I forgot about that story though. Oh my
And
god.
the thing is,
Oh.
in the after, you know, I told you about that last letter I sent to Les and his reaction. One other thing he said to Christine, the woman who was reading all the letters people were writing to him, and she was our liaison. Christine fucking did amazing job of just letting us know what was happening throughout his whole ordeal over a year. This is like a lot of operations, a lot of procedures. She was amazing liaison, and she said that he told her, you know, it's like, be sure to ask David about the time when you come across the T-shirt with the boots, because Gibby, he was always making T-shirts like about stuff. One time he made me a T-shirt. That thing upstairs is not my daughter, because we're like up all night watching Exorcist, you know. And he decided, and
That's great.
and he made a T-shirt of that for me. And so he made a T-shirt with some pictures of cowboy boots that Les had in his collection. So it's like, when you're going through my stuff and you come across that shirt, ask David to tell you that story. So that's that story.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. He must have wrote something on the boots. He might have even said something that was like became a catchphrase for us for Les. I don't remember, because a lot of memories from these days are kind of a blur for what you could see, because, you know, we were up late night doing a lot of drinking and smoking. But classic Les experience right there. That was a classic. That's what you could expect. You know, don't fuck with the man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't cross
Or
the
you're gonna
bound. Don't
get
cross the line. Don't cross the line.
the boot.
If you're a young upstart who's going to cross the line, he loved to educate people of a true New York experience, not just like, oh, bottle service and, you know, an Uber. No, that's not a New York experience.
No.
You know, it is,
Yeah.
you open your mouth to the wrong guy and you get a boot to the back of the head, thinking that you're totally safe in the East Village. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
sorry. This old man happens to be the wrong old man to fucking
To be
cross.
fucking with. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, man. Never forget that. Yeah. Oh. Well,
Hello.
yeah.
I can still hear you.
You do.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna call it a night. I'm gonna say, you know, I'm not done with the stories are never over. That's for sure.
No.
But I'm glad we get to share our
Absolutely.
stories.
Yeah, it'd be good to get some other people on, like you said, and talk, have some more stories and more conversations.
Yeah, I'm not done. I'm not done talking about him. He's going to be, you know, he has been part of my life for a long time. He's going to be for the rest of my life, and you know, I think there's going to be a time to remember and honor him constantly. So we'll get back to that some more. But thank you for listening out there. I hope that if you don't know Les, you will get to know who he was. If you do know Les, I'm sorry for your loss. And if you want to share your story, if you know Les and you're listening and you want to share a story, write to us at gimmiebabel@gmail.com, and we'll maybe be able to finagle a call with you about it. You know, it's hard enough for us to do this with each other, but we'll
do
try
each other. Yeah. But in that case, I think we would definitely make it happen. That'd be great, man.
Yeah, make that effort.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it.
Love you, Les.
Yeah, love you very much. Never forget you. Thank you for everything. And one last thing I told him, I said I wasn't done with him. I said I'm still going to be bothering you and calling on you for advice. So don't think you're off the hook. And it's true. It's not off the hook. Still going to be fucking. Still looking for answers, buddy. So
Yeah.
send me some of those messages in a bottle somehow. And David, I love you very, very
I love
much.
you too, brother. I love you too, man. No doubt, man. This is great to do this.
Yeah. And you can find us on YouTube and on SoundCloud and here at Gimmie Babel. So, so cheer up.
Yeah, video podcast.
Yeah, and now we're on video. It's really hard to get into this whole thing sometimes, but that's what it is. That's what it is. Big part of it. Big part of everything that we do is this darkness that comes along with it. And isn't that what we're wind up celebrating quite often? I mean, look at us
you said
dressed in
something
black.
so poetic earlier, and I can't remember what it was, but it had to do with there is no light without darkness, but it was much more deeper and special, and I can't wait to go back.
Go back and listen to it.
But it was beautiful. It was beautiful because it made me appreciate kind of I don't know, the mindset that I kind of go into a little bit more,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, exploring it is and understanding is a big part of dealing with it and healing and yeah. And these are the times when most sort of need to understand the pain, where the pain comes from, and that there is another side to the pain, and that and so on and so forth. Okay.
There you
buddy,
go. There you have it.
I love you. I love you all. Most of you out there. There's some of you I really dislike. Really, but it's not personal. It's just the way I feel. All right, David. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, I'll talk to you soon. I love you, brother.
Let's say goodbye.